Colleen Delaney, and this is a reading check-in. Hi, I'm Colleen. If you're new here, I talk about books and writing. Today is going to be a reading check-in video, which I do occasionally, mostly when I'm swamped for time. So this is going to have both all the books I read in September and what I'm planning to read in October. In the description, as always, I'm going to have links to my newsletter, which is going to become more fun pretty soon. And I also will put some links to the books I've written and stuff like that. I'm having the craziest morning. I'm just having a crazy morning, but we're not going to talk about that because this isn't a vlog. This is a reading check-in. So instead, let me tell you about September. We'll start with all the books I read in September, and then we'll go into my TBR, which is peeking out over here. September was nuts. I think maybe my life is just crazy right now in this season of it, but after having, a hard time in the summer, both reading and writing, because I was so busy with my children, I did not have the reading month in September I was expecting because, thankfully, I've been working so much on writing stuff, which I needed to. I had so much to do, and I just really fell behind. When you're in the throes of editing stuff that's coming out soon, that's great, but also you always need to be working on stuff that's going to come out in a couple of years. And so I had really in the summer dropped the ball on working on anything that wasn't just imminently breathing down my neck. And so I have taken this entire month to finally figure something out in a book that's coming out, probably in like 18 months to 2 years, that was just really difficult. And I finally had a breakthrough on it. And that was so helpful. I can't tell you. If you were watching this as a writer, you will know how helpful that is, because it can be really discouraging when you just can't figure out a part of a book you're working on. So September I spent a lot of time working on that. And also I spent a lot of September absolutely exhausted. Just my kids are getting older and the sheer amount of activities that I am chauffeuring them to. And my oldest is a cross-country runner, and I was a cross-country runner. And the thing about cross-country is you have to drive very far to get to courses, a lot. And so I have spent a lot of time in the car with all my children because my husband works kind of crazy hours, so he's not really available to help out with that. So it's not just me driving to a cross-country meet with the oldest and then driving him home. It's me driving 3 elementary school girls who complain the whole time, and then getting the oldest, and then driving everybody home while they cry hysterically that I'm not letting them have McDonald's for dinner. So a lot of nights I've been working from about 8:30 when I finally get the majority of the kids settled until 10, and then all I want to do is watch Love is Blind UK. Or I finally finished watching the 3rd season of Discovery of Witches, which was really good. And I just haven't been reading. You'll see when you look at my paltry September wrap, which we'll start with right now. And I think I'm going to just do them in the order in which I read them. I started the month, just kicked off the month with a great book. And I read Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I really enjoyed this book. I've talked about this before, but that I always feel like when I read the description of a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, I never feel like I'm going to be that interested in it. I don't particularly care about tennis. One of my sisters was a tennis player, and she played her whole childhood and high school and everything, and she plays for fun now. But I played tennis for a very short period of time, and I was very bad at it. And so it never really interested me. But I really liked this, and I liked that it's about a woman she's not old by any means, but she's in her 30s, and she's trying to prove that she still, has something to give to the world of athletics. And it was a very enjoyable read. I really liked it. Now, I didn't like it as much as Evelyn Hugo, which is my favorite. But I'd say I liked it pretty much evenly as how I felt about Malibu Rising. I don't think I cried. Did I cry reading this? I can't remember if I cried reading this. If I did, I only teared up. I didn't all out sob. But this was a great book to kick off the month with. Next, I read First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston for my book club. And I liked this. This was a solid thriller. It's got some cool identity stuff in it. I actually have this nice little note that I put for book club in here with all the characters' names in it because they're a little confusing. But our main character is Evie/Luca. And she's basically a good con woman, like an expensive con woman. And she's been put on this new case. And it's for this man named Ryan, who she is supposed to just be sort of like collecting information about him. And then you jump around in time a lot about how she got into this business and things start to go sideways. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good thriller. It wasn't the best thriller I ever read. I think most of the people in my book club thought it was a good thriller. No one loved it. No one hated it. It was just sort of a solid read. It didn't make me want to read everything that this author has written, but I definitely didn't like dislike my time with it. It was fun. Here's where things start to get a little bit patchy. I actually have to open my Kindle because the next book I read, I just looked it up also, and I cannot remember anything about it. Now, I looked it up and it's very short. It's like a short story. Craving the Mountain Man by Abby Jensen. I had some insomnia. I have a lot of insomnia in September. I have a feeling I'm gonna have some tonight. And so I couldn't fall asleep one night and I was like, I'm just gonna read this book. And I think it's like 50 pages. It was really short. And during the Romance Bookworm Stuff Your E-Reader Day, which Finding His Mate was a part of and was amazing. Like over 6,000 people got a copy, which made me so happy. I got a bunch of short reads. I tend to use those days to buy like very short novellas because I have this insomnia problem. And it's good for me to have a book that's like only 80 pages that I'm going to read, because then I don't get like too into it and stay up all night reading. And for some reason, this year's theme for me was lumberjacks. I got a lot of lumberjacks and some bear shifters. I don't know, I was in a woods mood. So I got that book from this and I just don't remember what it was about. I read it probably at like midnight till 1 a.m. and I can't remember it. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars, maybe 4 stars on Goodreads, so I must have enjoyed it a little bit. It's like a curvy girl who gets rescued by a lumberjack, and there's a cabin. And I think her brother's in it, and he's annoying. I can't remember. Oh no, he doesn't rescue her. I don't know. It was fun, I guess. Oh my gosh. Now, going on from there, which was like the weirdest review ever, and that's nothing against Abby Jensen. I read this in the middle of the night, and so I don't really know what it's about. If you love lumberjack books, I'm sure it was good. Now, then I got into a little bit of rough territory. I told myself I was going to read The Ministry of Time because I've just not wanted to read it. And you know what? I was not in the mood in September to force myself to read something I didn't want to read. So at this point in the month, I got really in like a magical mood, and I was like, I want to read something a little bit more magical. And so I read A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I understand why people love this author. And I would even understand why people would love this book. It just missed the personal mark for me. So it's a fairy tale retelling of Goose Girl, which I didn't remember Goose Girl at all. Basically, the premise is there's this girl and her mom is a sorceress, and her mom can like compel her, like, so she can control her. And her mom has set her sights on this man who's like wealthy but not too wealthy, to kind of like seduce him and make him fall in love with her so he can marry her and then like bankroll them. And her mother has a horse who's a familiar. What I did really like in this is I love witchy stuff, and I write a lot of good witches, but I love a book that's more like sinister, where witches are not good and they are pretty evil and they have deals with the devil and they have possessed familiar demons. And I liked that the horse was like not a good familiar. That was a really good part. So I enjoyed those aspects of the book. The most interesting narrator, because there's 2? Yes, 2, is the sister of the man that the mother is trying to seduce. So she's, I would say, like in her mid-50s. And she's a great romantic plotline, which I super enjoyed, being someone in my 40s now. You know, romance doesn't die. And she was a really good narrator, trying to figure out what was going on and kind of like trying to protect her brother in any way she could. It's a little bit of a quieter story. You know, it has that fairy tale vibe versus like high fantasy or even like low fantasy. It feels very fairy tale, which might be one of the reasons that it didn't just grab me. So it did take me a while to get through it, but I did find the writing style great, and I do understand why people really love this author. If you really like Naomi Novik and like, what was that book called? I can't remember what it's called right now. She wrote 2 books. Uprooted, and I didn't read Uprooted, and I can't remember the name of the one I did write. It's like the blue cover. I'll put the cover up so you know what I'm talking about. I think you would like this book. If you like those kinds of fantasy books, I think you'd like this book too. This is already the end of what I read in September, which is insane. I only read 4 books and 1 short story or novella or whatever, which is just crazy because I usually read way more if you're here a lot. But the last book I read was Hera by Jennifer Saint. And okay, this is such a hard book to review because while I was writing it, I did not write this book. While I was reading it, I wasn't having that good of a time. But no one writes an ending like Jennifer Saint. That woman can end a book so well. So you follow Hera, the Greek goddess, who's not great. I was a little confused when I saw that Jennifer Saint's new book was going to be Hera because she did Ariadne, and then she wrote a book that was called Electra, but it's Clytemnestra, Electra, and Cassandra. And I just had to go into that telling you, Cassandra is one of my favorite characters in Greek mythology. And then she did Atalanta, and now she did Hera. So this is her first time doing like a main goddess. So Ariadne in the myths is sometimes a goddess of puzzles, but not always. And then the others, you know, they're mortals living among these gods and goddesses in ancient Greece. So I was a little surprised that she was doing Hera. I was also surprised that she picked Hera because Hera is arguably the most unlikable of the Olympians. Zeus is not likable. He's a horrible person, but she's such like a victim punisher. It's like, oh, you were horribly raped by Zeus and forced to carry his child, and now his wife is just gonna turn you into a cow or something, or like, it's so, she's not likable and she's not sympathetic. The beginning of the book was very much Jennifer Saint trying to make her sympathetic and trying to kind of rewrite what I think of as Hera's core myths. You know, I like mythology retellings when they do stick to the core of the person. Like, this is how this person is characterized. This is what we know about them from these legends. And Hera's beginning was not Hera, in my opinion. I'm not a Greek scholar, obviously, but I was a Greek mythology kid. The end of the book is so good. It's so good. The last like 30 pages of this book are phenomenal. So I don't know what to tell you. It takes place over thousands of years, as a lot of these retellings do, when you have someone who's immortal. So you start with the fall of Cronus and like the emergence of the Olympians, and you end with the end of ancient Greek civilization and sort of like and even like the end of Rome and people worshiping them and like sort of what happens to them after. And it was just beautiful. I think I rated this 3.5 stars because I wouldn't give it a full 4. If you know me, to rate a book 5 stars, I either have to inhale it, not be able to stop reading it, or it has to be like a favorite, like it's a permanent favorite. I rate most books I enjoy 4 stars. Like 4 stars is really where I rate most books. I think I gave this 3.75 because like the ending was just gorgeous, but I did struggle. Like, it took me probably like 6 days to read this book, which is odd for me. I usually read much faster, but that was the name of the game this month. There is my September wrap. So now let's talk about all the books I want to read in October and whether or not I think I'll be able to do it. I brought down a really big stack of books, and I'm not going to read all these books, but I just wanted to tell you what I would like to read. Really quickly, before I go through my physical copies, I do have an arc for Deja Brew by Celeste Martin, and I would really like to read that in October. I think that arc was due like 2 weeks ago, and I'm just behind. So I would really like to read that book, and it's perfect. It's like witchy and spooky season and so fallish, and October would be the perfect time of year for me to read that. Moving on to what I have. I am currently reading Ensnaring the Siren by Desiree Nicolai, and I was planning on finishing this in September, but the last couple of days there's just been a lot going on. Oh, that's all I can say, is there's just been a lot going on, and I have been falling into bed and not feeling like reading. But I'm enjoying this so far. I'm on page 60. I am planning, once I'm done filming, to let myself read for about 30 minutes before I do any other work. But I'm on page 60 and I'm enjoying it. It's the 3rd book in the Haven Cove series. So Call to the Deep and Song of Lorelei were the first 2. We live in a world where mermaids are real, but they're only recently like come out to the public. And now people are sort of grappling with what it means to know that there are mermaids off the coast. We're taking place in Maine, so you're in like the North Atlantic. Our main characters are different. So the first 2 books followed one couple, Lorelai and Killian. This is a new couple. So Nereid, who is a wild mermaid. Lorelai was not a wild mermaid. She lived most of her time on land. And so it's Nereid and Reed. And Reed is a Coast Guardsman, and they meet during a particularly violent interaction between some immoral fishermen and a pod of mermaids. And the meet cute is horrifying, but very fun. So I am really enjoying this. And I do think I'm going to finish this book in the next couple of days. I just need to carve out some time in which I am not drafting, editing, or driving. Next, I do have to finish this book kind of quickly because I have another book club coming up a week from today, and I need to finish my book before then. Thankfully, I read pretty quickly. And we are going to read 28 Summers by Ellen Hildebrand. This is a chunker, which I did not realize. I got to start this soon. How many? Oh yeah, this is over 400 pages. A woman in my book club really wanted to read it, and I've obviously, you know me, if you watch this often, I'm going to put my bookmark in so it's ready. I read a lot of Ellen Hildebrand. I've not read this one. This was pitched to me as it's about a couple who meet once a year on Labor Day weekend in Nantucket, and no matter what relationship they're in, if they're married or whatever, they always have this like weekend to themselves. And I will see how I like it. I know there's a movie that's literally that plot line that I remember hearing about in a podcast, but I cannot remember any other information about it. I don't know how I will feel about this. I don't love affairs in books, unless it's like very specifically. I will read a book with an affair if it is a historical book and particularly the woman is trapped in a marriage that is unhappy, maybe abusive, maybe just borderline abusive. She didn't want to marry this person. She's stuck. She can't get out. And the man is unmarried, because that makes more sense to me, because there's like, you know, just because of like societal constraints. Modern day, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this, but I do love Ellen Hildebrand. So I do think I will read this book very fast. I better, because I have to have it done in a week and I have another book I want to finish first. So hopefully I will just fly through it, and I will, I don't know, somehow get more hours in the day. We'll figure it out. Next, I have a bunch of witchy books that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to go over them kind of quickly. Mainly because I really don't know what I'm going to read this month. Like, the more I think about it, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to read this month. I am hopeful that I can have like a day where I can do that thing where I sit in my backyard and just read nonstop, because I usually do that in September. Most Septembers, I have 2 books on my wrap up that I read in one day, and I had 0 this time. So I better get those in October. The first book I have that's witchy is Witch of Wild Things by Raquel Vasquez Gillian. I've had this on my TBR since May. Oh my word, I need to read this book. How about this? If you've read this, in the comments, tell me how great it was. Because I know it's like cozy, witchy, small town, coming back to where you grew up and your high school sweetheart is super handsome. And that sounds wonderful, but I sort of just like need the push. I think part of the reason I'm having a hard time starting this is the last 2 books I read, similar vibey to this, not 100%, but similar vibey, I didn't enjoy that much. They were Small Town Big Magic by Hazel Beck. Didn't really like that book. I had to force myself to finish that book. I listened to the audio when I was in the car by myself. I like sat down with a timer and read it. And then The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic. I can't remember who the author of that is right now. Brienne Randall. Those both didn't do much for me. And so I think that might be part of the reason I'm putting this off. So if you've read this and it's wonderful, please tell me in the comments to motivate me to read it. Next, I have The Witches of New York by Amy McKay, which is 1880s New York, I believe. Yes. It's seances, it's historical witchcraft. That felt like something I would like. I'm not gonna lie also, it's like 75 degrees out and sunny right now. Like, can we get some cloudy, rainy, October-y weather so that I can curl up with this in front of a fire and just throw myself into it? I haven't heard a ton about this. I got this at my used books sale that my town does. And I'm gonna be honest, I love that cover. So we'll see whether or not this gets picked up this month. Next, I started this book. I started it in September. I only read the first 12 pages though. And it's Night of the Witch by Sarah Rash, I think, and Beth Revis.
The first chapter was very intense. This seems like it's going to be dark fantasy, maybe borderline a little bit horror. And you start with a literal massacre of a witch town and one survivor. And there's a bunch of witch hunters and she's basically like, I'm going to go after them. And that sounded fun. And I've talked about this in other videos, I think. I don't know if I have or not. I filmed some videos out of order and now it's hard for me to remember what I've posted and what I haven't for like little asides. But I am going to try to read more epic, slightly darker historical fantasy in general, just so you know, because of where a direction in which I might be taking my writing. This seemed like a good one to put on the list. It's also got awesome sprayed edges. This is my first sprayed edges book. I'm usually not, I was going to say a bad word. What's a better word for it? I was going to say I'm not an SLUT for a sprayed edge, but I really like this one and I can't think of a different word to put in place of that one. So you get the spelling. And then my last witchy book, most likely, is The Bone Witch by Rin Kupeko. I got this from the witchy book table at Barnes & Noble. One of my friends really enjoyed it. It looks creepy. It's very long. A lot of the books that I have on this TBR are very long. And I'm going to be really honest. I also have like 30 under 150 page romance novels on my Kindle. There's a very good chance if my mood continues, not my mood, I should just say like the circumstances of my life continues being as what they are, that there's a lot of those books on my wrap up at the end of October and not a lot of these over 400 paged high fantasies. But I do think I want to read this. We'll see what I can do. I also threw this book on here. I don't think I'm going to read it this month. The Druid's Tune by Aura Melling. I got this at a used bookstore when I was in Nova Scotia this summer. Let me just say also, Nova Scotia is gorgeous. I love it. I'd like to go back there every summer. I went to a used bookstore, whose name I'm forgetting right now, and I already pulled the tag off of this. It's like On Paper, I think. And it was a lovely bookshop. If you find yourself in Sydney, Nova Scotia, go to that bookshop. It was so nice. And the woman who worked there was so nice. And she was so nice to my children, which I really appreciate. But Aura Melling was one of my favorite authors when I worked at the indie bookstore and I was working in like the young adult fantasy department was what I was in charge of. And she wrote this great quartet. And she's Irish. She came to my bookstore, which is like in the middle of, not the middle of nowhere, but we're in the Midwest. I'm not from New York, California. And I did an author event with her and she was lovely. And she had told me she had these other books, but they were all out of print. And so I saw this one at that bookstore. And seriously, this book came out in, 1983. And this version was published in 1995. And that felt crazy that I just happened to be in that bookshop and see it and grab it. So I do want to read this. I don't know if it's going to happen in October. I'd have to be in the right frame of mind, but it's also a quick read. It's like 270 pages. I could fly through that. So we'll see. I don't know what it's about. It's Ireland. It's like such a 90s cover. I absolutely love it. Look at that illustrations. I'm going to be honest. I super miss, I think it's probably just part of getting older, but I miss certain trends and covers that we've moved away from. I will always love the original American covers of the Seven Water series by Juliette Marillier. That cover was just if a book looked like that in 2002, I was buying it. Now we're going to move on to book of the month. And I currently have 3 unread book of the month in my house. That one of them I didn't even bring down. Shelterwood by Lisa Wingate, I think her name is, something like that. I know I'm not going to read that in October. I have it on my November TBR. If I even get to it then, maybe I'll get to it in December. I have no idea. But I did just do something kind of crazy also, and that was that I ordered 3 books this month. I'm just messing myself up because every January, I do a review of every book I got from Book of the Month the year before, but I have to read them all before I can do that video, and I really like to do it in January, so I'm just giving myself a lot of reading for the end of the year. So here's what I have right now, and then I'll tell you what I ordered. So I do have The Ministry of Time still by Kayleen Bradley. I don't know what I'm doing with this. I am hoping, my husband's been really crazy busy at work, but it is going to calm down at some point. I'm hoping that I can start bringing this to soccer practice.
I don't have to watch soccer practice. I just have to be there. And if I'm there and no one else is with me, I can sit and read. I don't have to watch children on the playground and make sure that they're not, injuring themselves. So I'm hopeful that this will maybe be my soccer practice book. 2 of my kids are going to start basketball soon. Maybe this will be my basketball practice book. I don't know. But that's what I'm hoping, that I'll just be able to get through this. It's so interesting as a book of the month belonger, whatever, member's the word, not belonger, seeing which books I have such a hard time picking up, because I do order a lot of books. I pretty much get any book that I'm going to buy that's not particularly romance or witchy, I get from book of the month. If I'm going to read historical fiction or contemporary fiction or whatever, I get it from book of the month. So it's really interesting to see which ones I just struggle to pick up. I got The Ministry of Time in May. Yikes. And I got Shelterwood in May, I think. May was rough. And the other book I got in May, I did not like. So that was definitely a rough month for me. Next, my month pick I got last month. I didn't read yet. A Song to Drown Rivers. I also got The Sorceress Comes to Call last month, but I wanted to read that one first. I do want to read this book. I am excited. It is like a forbidden love romance fantasy. It's probably not going to end happily. It's like a little over 300 pages and the font is enormous. So I know that's actually really selling this to me. I might read this after I finish 28 Summers. I know I will get this read because I just have a feeling it will be a quick read. And also, I mean, I'm excited. Like, it also sounds like it's good. Like, I'm not just saying I only want to read it because it's short. It also sounds good. We've got like a beautiful woman who's getting trained to like infiltrate the enemy. And that sounds like something I would really enjoy. I think there's a greater chance that in my October wrap up, this one is done. Okay, what did I order today? You're all gonna think I'm crazy. And you know what? I am crazy, but I'm gonna tell you afterwards what I was thinking about. So I got The Wild Hunters by Emily Lloyd Jones. It's a retelling of the the Welsh legends that I read in college, and I flippin' loved that stuff in college. And it's YA, which usually I don't do well with, but you know what? I have this plan, and I'm supposed to be reading books that would be similar to this new stuff I'm going to work on, and this is in that vein. And so I was like, I need to read this book. It's over 400 pages, but it's YA, and it's got the most beautiful cover I've ever seen. So I did order that. And then I was looking at my October reads, and I was like, I don't have a thriller. And the picks, which I'm going to go over really quickly, I already commented on my last video because I was so proud of me. I actually did a pretty good job. So The Book of Witching by C.J. Cook sounded right up my alley, and they have it listed as gothic fiction, but it is listed as horror on Goodreads, and I read some of the reviews, and I think it is just too scary for me. So I did not want to get that one. Dearest by Jackie Walters, which I did not guess. Oh, I'm sorry. I should say that I guessed The Book of Witching would maybe be a pick, and The Wild Hunters would. The rest I did not talk about. Dearest by Jackie Walters is a horror. No thank you, especially because the first one is voices on the baby monitor, animated toys, creepy crawlers, motherhood's hard but never been quite this terrifying. Okay, so for a very short period of my childhood, my parents used to we would move into a house and they would fix it up and then we would sell it. Like, we flipped houses, but we lived in them during. So we were doing that at one point in my childhood. And we moved into a really, really old house. Like, really, really old. We didn't usually do this with really old houses. And that house was terrifying. I convinced myself it was haunted. We only lived there for 2 years, so it was okay. But 2 of my siblings were very little, and we had baby monitors all over the house because of that. And the baby monitors used to pick up other radio channels. Terrifying. I'm not reading that. The thriller pick was called The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. And I read the blurb and it just didn't really speak to me. And then there was a paranormal romance called The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle, which I originally thought I was going to pick. But then when I read the sample pages, it sounds more fantasy romance than paranormal romance, which is fine. But it's enemies to lovers, and it's a series, which makes me think it's going to be a very slow burn enemies to lovers. And I am not a slow burn person, 1. 2, I don't really like enemies to lovers. I think it's fine, but it's not. I like friends to lovers so much more. Probably because I'm a Taurus, so if I don't like you, I'm never gonna like you.
So I knew I wanted to get a thriller for October because I'm not going to have October without a thriller. So I got Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister, which I've had, when that came out, I just put it on my TBR, whatever month that was, I can't even remember. I picked something else, but I was like, I'm going to throw that on my TBR. And then I did something crazy. And I did something crazy because I'm kind of running low on credits. My book of the month content used to get like a ton of traffic, and it's not really getting it anymore. But from that traffic used to come a lot of people using my discount code to sign up, and then I would get like a free credit. And I'm not like, I still have like 8 after this purchase of 3, but I've really, really wanted The Secret History by Donna Tartt and just been holding off because I know it's so long and I don't know when I'm going to read it, but I bought it. And I might not read that in time for my review of the year. I might save that for like next September. I don't know. Or maybe in like March, I'll just be feeling dark academic and want to read that. But I did finally buy it because I do really like dark academia. I loved If We Were Villains. I love Carol Goodman so much. I mean, I just finished watching Discovery of the Witches. That was fantastic. That's more like witchy academia than dark academia. But I'm like, I have to read The Secret History, which, you know, started it all. It's editing, Colleen, and we are finally having our cozy, rainy, cold October day that I was hoping for. I forgot to tell you about one of the book of the months I picked. I picked 4 this month, not 3. I also got The Stone Witch of Florence by Anna Rash, which is historical fantasy, because I told myself from now on, if there's historical fantasy, I'm going to buy it. That one I'm definitely going to try to read in October because it's a witchy book, and I can't believe I forgot to tell you about it. There we go. So that insanely long list is way more books than I could ever read in the month of October, especially if my mood continues and I only read 4 books and a short story a month. But what I wanted to talk about is I do think that my number of books read in a month might go down a little bit. And who knows, maybe I'm saying that right now, and then this October I'm gonna be like, I read 12 books and 6 of them were short novellas. But I had this epiphany like a year and a half ago. I think it was like, not this January, like not January 2024. I think January 2023, I said I was going to go back to reading like big, thick, long books. And I just never did. And I have a lot of very thick books on this TBR. And I should read them. And so you might only get, you know, a few books a month in this wrap up, which is fine. I'm also probably gonna start doing a little bit more writing content on this channel. I played around with the idea of having more than one channel, and I'm just gonna be honest, that's not gonna happen with the amount of work I have to actually write. I don't have time to keep 2 channels afloat. So I'll probably just start posting a little bit more writing stuff on here too, if that interests you. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, I'm still gonna post book stuff. And now let's wrap up this video by saying thank you for hanging out and watching it. Did you read any of the same books as me in September? Probably not. I mean, actually, I bet a lot of you, not a lot of you, I bet a handful of you read A Sorceress Comes to Call because that just came out. And maybe Hera. The rest, I don't know. And what'd you think about them? Or what have you read that's on my TBR? And sell it to me. Sell me any of them. Literally any of them. You don't have to sell me The Ministry of Time. Other people have already tried to do it. I don't know what's wrong with me. And this book, we're just having a hard time. It's kind of the same thing. I just went through this with The Great Divide by Christina Enriquez. I just didn't want to pick it up. And then I forced myself to read it. And I thought it was fine. It wasn't great. It was fine. And that's what kind of how I feel like I'm going to feel about The Ministry of Time, which is fine. I don't have to love every book I read. But if you've read these 2, I would love if you told me which one you liked better. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to read both of them this October. Who knows? Maybe I will. But I'd love to know which one I should read for all my witchy, dark witchy vibes for this spooky season. If you've made this far in the video and you don't want to write words, why don't you give me some falling leaves, maple, brown, whatever you feel like? Because as sunny and hot it is today, so sunny and hot that I had to film here instead of my normal spot because it was too bright, I am ready for more fall. And we do have a lot of falling leaves, mainly because we've been in a drought. Here's to an October of cloudy, chilly, rainy days, perfect for reading, perfect for doing my editing. And I hope all of you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I will see you soon.